It was great. I really felt it was a special community, small, quaint, kind of small town Americana, the friendly city. I don't know if that title came on until later, but that's how it always felt. And it felt like it had its own unique identity, kind of different from the larger surrounding cities like Torrance and Gardena and Carson. They felt, to me anyway, it felt a little cold, big, not that special identity. So that was something I felt with Lomita. I felt proud to say I was from Lomita, and I felt proud as a little kid to know that Lomita meant little hill in Spanish. And we would sometimes be up in LA or up in the mountains, and I could see Palos Verdes Peninsula and say, hey, yeah, we live right at the base of that. We're not the big hill, but we're the little hill. So yeah, it had a special vibe and feel for me. As far as I think you asked like the history of the house too, which I really didn't consider or think it was the oldest house in Lomita until, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, we came across a little pamphlet, and it was actually when my parents were in the hospital, and that pamphlet was there, and we were reading through it, and says, "Oh, the oldest house in Lomita, 2092 Geisen Street." I said, "Wow, okay." Not knowing that it was the oldest house, but still knowing it was very unique and special. It was the last house on the cul-de-sac, and at the time, it was the only house on the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac wasn't even there. They hadn't built the houses on Geisen Street when my parents first moved in. They actually had to go up to behind the house up to Appian Way and 263rd to pick up their mail and take out their trash. So those houses weren't even built yet. And I recall going down to the construction site with my dad then after the workers left for home. They had dropped nails or they had fallen, and we'd go down there and pick up the nails and put them in cans. And if you went in our garage now, you'd still find a lot of nails from that scavenger hunt. The only other residence or property was just directly to the east of us. And the people who lived there, we called them Opa and Uncle Felix, even though they weren't related to us. They were related to the Wilburns down on 262nd Street. But that's what we called them. And Opa would come over to our property sometimes and tend to the oranges and other things like that. Their property was even bigger than ours. It had, they grew nut trees and fruit trees and berries and vegetables. I recall as a kid, they had some scary little sheds because sometimes we'd be able to go in the yard, scary little sheds and outbuildings. And they actually had a trolley car that was abutted right next to our house. And again, seemed kind of scary. And I think that property actually, I think I saw one time it actually went from there up at the top all the way down through Ober Street, which is a little street off of Geisen, and down to 262nd Street where the Wilburns lived. And they were the only other neighbors we had at the time. Like I said, none of the houses in Geisen were there. They had the Wilburns down there. And as a matter of fact, you may want to check, Rena Wilburn still lives there. And you may want to look her up and see if she can give you any kind of insight on history and that area. I felt like we were kind of isolated. We didn't go out to the other parts of the city other than maybe on Narbonne Avenue, some of the businesses down there. At that early age, I was only maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, so don't have a whole lot of memory of that. But maybe getting back to the house. The house was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. I think they call it a Grove house. And having 6 of us living there with only 1 bathroom, that got to be a challenge sometimes. My little brother and I, if it was an emergency and we couldn't wait, we were allowed to go behind the garage to the woodshed. We also had a little house on the property we called the guest house, kind of like, I guess, an ADU these days. It was only a 1-bedroom house, had a kitchenette, had a bathroom, although I never remember us using the bathroom. My dad would use that to do work he brought home, and he was a big pigeon fancier, and he did his pigeon stuff in that little house. Oh, it also had a little cellar that I thought was very cool. No other houses here in the area or something had cellars. They were only back east, so we felt that was pretty unique and special. The yard was big. It's full of pine trees. We had a beautiful birch tree in the front, fruit trees, and then what was really cool was in our side yard we had 3 large avocado trees that kind of canopied the whole side yard. And as kids, we'd love climbing up in those trees. And the challenge was to go from one tree to the next tree to the next tree, kind of Tarzan-like, and not drift too far because we had a dog named Rusty that would nip at our ankles. So that was great. And it was unusual too, is because none of us really enjoyed avocados. We would take them to church and give them away there, or take them to the school and give them away there. That was awesome, having those big old canopy avocado trees to play in. And well, growing up in that cul-de-sac there, it was kind of the hub, our yard, and the cul-de-sac was like a hub for all the neighborhood kids. And prior to coming in here, I sat down and tried to think how many kids actually grew up on that Geisen Street block. And I came up with 20. There were 20 of us, probably within 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age of each other, growing up there on that street. And then there was, of course, maybe 3, 4 others that grew up in 263rd Street in the Pines there, and came down and joined in all our fun activities, our baseball games in the cul-de-sac, basketball games, kickball, tag, and hide and seek in our yard was great because we had all the trees and all the different things there. So that was really fun activity for the kids in the neighborhood. What was also unique about the property, I think, was it butted up right next to Rolling Hills. It was on the border of Lomita and Rolling Hills. And the hill behind us, there were no homes. It was a great place for us to go explore, build forts. And along Narbonne Avenue there, which kind of keeps going around that way, Chandler Sand and Gravel, I think they let a lot of water out there. So it was like a little stream along there. And we'd love exploring that. We'd catch tadpoles and frogs and different things of that nature. Every now and then a gopher snake, but it was, my parents, I don't think like that so much. But it was also the way we got up to Chandler's Field. I don't know if you knew Chandler's Field. That was the Lomita Little League at the time. And so in that days, yeah, we didn't have to have anyone drive us up there. We could walk up there, and I loved playing baseball at Chandler's Field, even watching the games at Chandler's Field. And I also remember, I was jotting down that when we walked up there was a golf course across the street on Narbonne, and the golfers would sometimes hit golf balls astray. We'd collect them and sell them back to the golfers for, I don't know, 50 cents, 25 cents, and use the money to go buy candy at the concession stand at Chandler's Field. So yeah, good old times growing up in Lomita. My dad raised pigeons, and my kids loved going up and helping him feed the pigeons. And we always had animals too. My mom had ducks, and so they always enjoyed going up there and helping out there. We had nice neighbors there, and we had, I think, like a babysitting co-op, and we traded off taking kids to the school and all. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and Cindy Grant worked at Lomita Elementary, so the kids got to know each other and have their parents there, kind of not helicopter parents, but overseeing, feeling comfortable that they were there. They went to Lomita Park and played all the sports there at Lomita Park, and took part in some of the activities. One thing I was going to mention, I kind of missed, I don't know if Lomita Little League does it anymore, but they used to have a parade going up and down Narbonne here for opening day. And I think maybe Miss Lomita might have been part of that parade at the time too. So I don't think they do that anymore. It'd be cool if they could bring that back. But they played Little League and all the little things Lomita did, and the fireworks. And so yeah, it was still a nice place for my kids to be raised and grow up. When my parents passed away, my siblings and I knew we didn't want to divide it up and for sell it for profit. We wanted to keep it in the family. We're still kind of working out how that might eventually become. Kind of the thought is maybe my wife and I, once my daughter kind of moves on a little more with her life, we'll see, might move in there, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think just the special feel of it. We host, my wife and I think I was talking about this earlier, or host all the family gatherings there. Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, some birthday parties. My parents started that for the extended family, not just for our close family, for the extended family. And my parents started that probably about 40 years ago. So when they passed, my wife and I kind of took it over with a little help from the siblings, and that's continued on. I feel really blessed that my daughter and my grandson can live there now and grow up, that my grandson can go out in the backyard and play his imaginary games in the dirt and climb the trees. He loves climbing the trees, and the cul-de-sac is still very safe, so he rides his little bike around the cul-de-sac, and it's kind of heartwarming for me to know that he's there sleeping in the bedroom that my brother and I slept in, and he's out playing in the yard that we played in. We just got to get him some ducks or chickens or something to tend, because we don't have that right now. We've kind of lost some of those, although I think the feed store is still there, and that was a very special place. My dad would buy his pigeon food there and his supplies. Here's another kind of unusual story. At our house, at one time, I don't know why or who climbed underneath the house, but in the crawl space, we noticed a whole nest, I guess that's the right term, of king snakes. And whoa, what are we going to do with that? Well, we called the feed store. They brought someone down, collected them all up and put them in their barn to catch their mice and rats and all. But yeah, Narbonne Avenue, the feed store, Wilson's department store, if you've heard of that. Actually, the Wilsons lived directly across from us on Geisen Street growing up. I think it was Hank's Hardware, or my dad would buy his hardware stuff. Holmes Sporting Goods, they were affiliated with the Little League, so we bought all our sporting goods stuff there. Yeah, we would frequent Hot and Tot all the time, Mr. G's some. And this may sound strange, but there was a liquor store. The liquor store is still there. I'm not sure what it's called on PCH, just a little bit west of Eshelman. It was called Hody's at the time, but that's where we would go to get our candy or soda pops, and I think they had comic books there. Another thing that was kind of unique and that I liked is that there were some small family-run stores kind of out of the storefront of their houses. And on 262nd and Appian Way, those folks had a little store right in the front of their house that we would sometimes go to and again buy candy. And then I don't remember frequenting it as much, but there was a little store right across from Fleming. I think they called it the Little Green Store or something. Those are the stores that I remember. And like I said, we didn't go too far off. We'd sometimes go into San Pedro. There was a dairy there on Western going down there. We would go to that dairy. And I think there was a garage that my parents took the cars to. So I remember going down to San Pedro some, but we didn't venture too far. The mall wasn't built then. Right. They used to have a Jim Thorpe 5K run. I think my good friend and classmate, Ben Trena, who was on the city council then, I think he was one of the instigators of starting that. And so I know I ran in it, my kids ran in it, my brother ran in it, my dad ran in it. I think I heard rumors that they were going to try to get that going again, but something fell through. I don't know what it was, but I'd like to see that come back again. I like seeing that they're doing this lemonade thing. It still seems a little more commercialized than I would think. I think in little kids lemonade stands, but they some of those go pretty far out with their entrepreneurship. But love seeing that kind of stuff that the Lomita sponsors, and the fireworks shows and Founders Day and Easter egg hunt that they do at Lomita Park. So yeah, those are all great. We don't have the young kids anymore, but now that I have a grandson, starting to get more involved in some of those things. Let me see if I remember. Started here just by City Hall. We'd run down 242nd Street, run all the way down Eshelman to the street before St. Margaret Mary's, go up St. Margaret Mary's to, I think it was Pennsylvania, go up Pennsylvania across Lomita Boulevard, and then I think it was the next street up over there, come down that, and then finish back here where we started. Yeah, it was a nice little loop run. And I even discovered, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago riding my bike, I never knew above Pennsylvania that there was part of the city community up there. It's a really nice, quaint little area up there. I didn't realize that at the time. I think one of your questions was how has the city changed or whatever, and I think the density of it that's of concern to me, and I think it's a concern to a lot of communities, and I know a lot of it's driven by state rules and things like that. But I wish there were other means where we could fight it, because there used to be huge lots here with people raising animals and horses and stuff. Those have almost all been subdivided. The property I was talking about before, where Opa and Uncle Felix lived, that property is up for sale right now. I'd love to have the means to buy that and build one or two houses for my family on there, have our own little Schatz community up there. But I'm afraid that maybe a developer is going to come in, and I've heard that they're going to allow at least 4 units on there, and maybe with ADUs. So now all of a sudden we got 8 new residents coming up through Geisen and over. So that's a bit of concern, the density aspect. And I don't know if the demographics are changing much, but to me, it seems like there's not as many families with children here. And again, that might be something, all the communities are dealing with. But I do commend the city for trying to do these things. I'm going to pick up on some of those 60th celebration things, the lemonade thing, the winter thing they did there. I'm glad my parents paid the exorbitant amount of $15,000 when they bought the property, I think in 1955. And I want to thank Lomita, and hopefully they continue to strive to keep our small, quaint, friendly city vibe, going.